Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to hear evidence from Mr. Graham Webb, who was the Managing Director of Repairs Direct, which carried out responsive repairs for the TMO. Yes, Mr. Kinnear.
Sir, may I call Mr. Webb?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Webb. It's nice to see you again.
Good morning.
I understand you're going to take the oath.
I am.
There should be a testament on the table beside you. Would you take that in your right hand, please, and read the words on the screen?
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Do sit down and make yourself comfortable. Yes, if you'd like some water, you
Thank you.
take some. Good. Thank you. When you're ready, Mr. Kinnear.
Thanks, sir. Would you mind confirming your name for the record?
Graham Webb.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Webb. Thank you for attending today to give evidence. Before we start questioning, the three things I should perhaps set out before we start. First of all, if at any time you feel you need a break, please say so. That's not a problem. Secondly, if you could keep your voice up throughout, that enables the shorthand writer to capture everything you say and capture accurately. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, my questions are hopefully clear. Sometimes they're not. If they're not clear to you, please don't hesitate to say so, and I'll rephrase it so it's comprehensible.
Thank you.
Now, you have provided 5 statements to the inquiry. The first statement is dated the 23rd of August 2018, which is found at TMO 100-48963. Is that it?
Yes, it is.
Your second statement is dated the 14th of February 2019, can be found at TMO 00840366. Is that it?
Yes, it is.
Third statement dated the 17th of April 2019, which is at TMO 00840368. Is that it?
Yes, it is.
Fourth statement dated the 20th of August 2019, which is at TMO 100-49986. And is that it?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. And fifthly and finally, the statement dated the 25th of September 2019, TMO 00842379. And is that it?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Have you read each of those statements recently?
I have, yes.
And can you confirm their contents are true?
They are indeed.
And you're content for those statements to stand as your evidence to this inquiry?
I am, yes, thank you.
Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss with you today is your personal experience and training. Now, if we turn to paragraph 3 of your second statement, which can be found at TMO 00840366/1, in the first line there, you say, my career background is in high-volume operational team management. What do you mean by high-volume operational team management?
So, in my background, I've led large teams of security staff at Heathrow Airport, where I led a team of 1,200 people. I've also led large teams of repair staff, so electricians, plumbers, plasterers. I've led manufacturing teams, so very much blue-collar, dynamic, quick turnaround workforces.
Thank you. And staying in the same paragraph at the end of the second line, you say that early in my career I spent a year in social housing repairs and maintenance.
Yes.
Now, for whom did you work during that year?
I worked for Morrison.
Thank you. And when was that year?
From my recollection, it was around 2012.
Thank you. And what was your role at that organisation?
I was a regional director and I looked after the responsive repairs and voids contracts across approximately 6 different clients, which in Kensington, Chelsea TMO, London Borough of Ealing and a number of others.
So can we take it from that you had experience before you started at Repairs Direct in maintenance of properties?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. What experience did you have in relation to the maintenance of fire safety systems?
I did not.
Any specific experience of maintenance as it affected fire doors?
Yes. So in social housing and repairs and maintenance, of course, then there was a responsibility for normally on the front doors for flats and in smoke alarms and smoke sensors, that sort of thing, within property, and also occasionally on the repair of communal fire doors.
Thank you. And what experience did you have of the management of health and safety generally?
As a manager of large operational teams, I was used to managing teams and putting health and safety at the front of the agenda, making sure we had a culture of safety leadership, and encouraged our staff to report not only accidents but near misses, so that we could learn from those and eradicate the opportunities for those to occur again.
Thank you. Could we turn to TMO 00853077/14? And we see there in the top right-hand corner, this is the spring 2016 edition of The Link, which is the TMO's newsletter, and it's the announcement of your appointment as Managing Director of Repairs Direct. Now, it says in that paragraph that you had at the time senior management and operational leadership experience in social housing repairs and maintenance.
Yes.
Was that your 1 year at Morrison's that's been referred to there?
Yes, it would be, yes.
And nothing else beyond that?
No, though it does refer to my time at Rock Group plc. Rock, which is a company which no longer exists, dealt with domestic insurance repairs, so similar kinds of activities in generally privately owned homes as a result of a leaky boiler or something of that sort.
Thank you. And what was your experience as Operations Director for Safety Clean UK in relation to the maintenance of properties?
In Safety Clean UK, I had a wide brief. I was responsible for their manufacturing operation, but I was also responsible for all of their facilities in the UK. So the maintenance management, soft FM, so cleaning, reception desks, and also all the usual safety systems, Legionella, etc.
During your time with Morrison's, what experience did you have of dealing with the TMO?
The TMO was one of, I believe, 6 contracts that I looked after. So I had a local manager embedded within the TMO who ran the day-to-day operation of the contract, and that was one of a cluster of contracts that I looked after for Morrison's.
Were there any issues that you encountered during that time about problems with maintenance at Repairs Direct and responsiveness and turnaround of?
There was a backlog of repairs that Morrison was struggling to clear, and we were involved in conversations with the TMO around how we could provide more resource to try and clear the backlog.
And that was your experience in 2012?
Yeah, and in short, it was agreed that we were unable to provide the service that they required within the funding that would have been the price points had been agreed. So Morrison served notice on the contract.
Mr. Webb, thank you. Before we go on to the next topic, it may well be that the shorthand writer is having some difficulties keeping up with you.
I'm sorry.
It's, if you can maybe adopt a slower pace, may
I will,
help.
yes.
Thank you very much. Right, can we turn to TMO 100489363/1? Now, this is paragraph 2 of your first statement to the inquiry, and you explain there that Repairs Direct was a wholly owned subsidiary of RBKC TMO, and its role was to deal with reactive repairs in residential housing managed by TMO. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is.
Can you help the panel and explain briefly your role and responsibilities as Managing Director of Repairs Direct?
So Repairs Direct handled all of the responsive repairs within the homes that were owned by the Royal Borough. So that would mean everything from a leaky tap to perhaps repairing a light switch or repairing a door, and also dealt with what was known as voids. So void properties are homes which have been vacated for one or other reason, and my team would visit that property and do whatever work was necessary to bring it back up to a defined lettable standard.
Thank you. Now, Sasha Jevons, who's the TMO's Director of Operations, says in her statement, and we don't need to go to it, but the reference is TMO quintuple 0893/6, and it's paragraph 29, the third line. She says this: Graham was directly accountable to the Repairs Direct board. However, I had a dotted line management function over him. Would you agree that Sasha Jevons had a dotted line management function above you?
I would, yes.
And what did that dotted line mean in practice?
Well, in essence, as the Repairs Direct was a separate limited company, I was answerable to the board of Repairs Direct. But for day-to-day issues such as approving periods of annual leave, then I would defer to Sasha for approval.
Now, the next topic I'd like to turn to is the information that was provided to you about the issues that were confronting Repairs Direct when you joined the company. Now, if we can turn to RBK 000-60576/1. Now, this document, as its front page shows, was a audit report concerning Repairs Direct, and it's dated May 2014. First of all, were you briefed on its contents when you arrived at Repairs Direct?
Well, I don't recall being briefed on its contents, no.
Have you seen this document before?
I don't believe so.
Do you recall any reference to an audit report of Repairs Direct in May 2014 during your time at Repairs Direct?
No, I recall that I was told that RBKC would from time to time audit Repairs Direct, but I don't recall a specific reference to a report from May 2014.
And you don't recall asking whether RBKC had previously carried out any audits?
No.
Could we stay in this document and turn to page 12? And we see in the top left-hand corner, it refers there to repairs quality monitoring. And the audit identified a number of areas of concern, or areas for concern, set out in the bottom left-hand corner, which included there in the first bullet point at the bottom of the page, general level of poor quality workmanship. And if we go over the page, we see at the very top left-hand corner, work claimed as completed, but where no work was actually undertaken. If we skip one, we see failure by some operatives to adhere to basic health and safety processes. And if we go to the very bottom of the list, we see quality of work produced by subcontractors is not included in surveys. And if we could turn to page 14, if we can look at the bottom paragraph, and the third and fourth bullet points there, greater focus on the quality of workmanship during the post-inspection process, and further health and safety training with random spot checks on both employees and subcontractors. Now, in relation to those identified failings in the audit and the steps taken to resolve them, Sasha Jevons said in her evidence, and the reference, we don't need to go to it, but the reference is day 127, page 117, lines 2 to 7. She said this: I know Graham was doing a lot of work in terms of these particular items. Focus groups. So, for example, we had a lot of work in the contact centre on our processes, a lot of work on improving the IT systems. We did health and safety gap analysis, more training. Now, first of all, do you agree with Sasha Jevons? Did she give a comprehensive summary there of the steps you were taking to make good the deficiencies identified in this plan?
Yes.
Can you briefly summarise, in your own words, what steps you took to meet those deficiencies set out in the audit plan?
Firstly, I made clear the daily service level targets that were expected of the team and made sure that the team were fully briefed of those. So they had an expectation over how old a repair job should be before it was completed. So the time taken between it being notified to us and the job being completed. We also made very clear our expectations on the quality of repairs and our aspirations that a repair should be completed on the first time of visit rather than requiring subsequent visits. And we did that through a number of different processes. But what was clear to me when I joined the organisation was that the staff lacked an understanding of that vision and lacked guidance and lacked motivation to achieve those targets.
Now, given that you hadn't seen RBKC's audit of May 2014, how did you yourself identify the failings that you set about addressing?
So in the time before I started work there had been an interim managing director called Paul Javot, who had been responsible for managing the repairs direct since my predecessor had left. He produced a report which picked up on many similar points. And when I first arrived, I took the time to spend time on the road with our operatives, to talk to residents, to talk to council members, to talk to our customer service team who took telephone calls, and really get first-hand experience of how people felt about the service that we were delivering.
When you succeeded Paul Javot, did you have a handover discussion of any sort?
Yes, we did.
Can you recall the gist of the conversation that you had with Mr. Javot on that occasion?
It mirrored many of the points that are made here.
And was there an individual called Chris Davis, who's the interim health and safety manager at Repairs Direct?
I don't recall that name.
Do you recall Mr. Javot telling you or advising you about the importance of ensuring jobs are, quotes, made good to fire-resisting standard?
I don't recall him making that point specifically. We talked about the quality of repair and the need to improve that, but we didn't talk specifically around the point that you mentioned.
Okay. Could we go to TMO 1000720, which is a health and safety action plan prepared for the TMO's Health and Safety Committee in January 2016. And if we can go to, thank you, row 13 and reference A5, column B, it says continue to work with A&R, which is asset and regeneration, and Repairs Direct to ensure that fire safety firmly embedded in all work. And if we look at column E, so going rightwards, it says that Janice Ray met with RD, so that's Repairs Direct Health and Safety, and impressed on him the importance of ensuring jobs are, quotes, made good to fire-resisting standard. Now, having seen that plan prepared in January 2016, and having had your memory refreshed, do you recall anything about Mr. Javot making the point that jobs are made good to a fire-resisting standard?
No, I don't recall him making a statement to that effect.
Did Janice Ray impress upon you the importance of making jobs good to a fire-resisting standard at any time?
Janice Ray and I had a number of meetings as part of my induction to the role and to the organisation. I don't recall her particularly flagging that as a concern, but we had a far-ranging conversation around health and safety performance generally.
Thank you. Now, when you joined Repairs Direct, did you receive any information regarding the company's role in reducing fire risk and ensuring the TMO complied with its fire safety obligations?
Sorry, can I ask you to repeat the question?
Of course. When you joined the company, did you receive any information about Repair Direct's role in reducing fire risk and assisting the TMO to comply with performance of its fire safety obligations?
I don't recall specific conversations on that topic. I do recall broader conversations around health and safety obligations and requirements.
Did fire safety have any particular prominence in those discussions?
No, I mean, if I'm to be honest, it is inherent in the nature of responsive repairs to have an awareness of fire safety precautions in the work that you do and in how you leave a repair when completed.
How did you, following on from that answer, how did you see Repair Direct's role in assisting the TMO perform its fire safety obligations?
So it's important that that the operatives have a clear understanding of the risk relating to the work that they do, and that's fulfilled by standard risk assessments for certain tasks. So, for example, there will be a standard generic risk assessment about how you change a washer on a tap. They then perform a dynamic risk assessment when they reach the site, because you have to look at the environment you're working in and consider any additional risks as a result of that. And there are certain activities that responsive repairs operatives undertake which require what we would call hot works, so welding or something that would generate heat, for which there is a permit process to ensure that it's properly controlled and there's proper planning around it. So lots of steps are in place to make sure that they're there and the work that they undertake is done in a way that prevents any risk of fire. And then on the completion of the work, depending on the nature of it, there may be a need to reinstate fire stopping. So that's, if you've had to drill through a wall or a floor plate to make sure that the material that plugs that gap is fire preventative material.
Put slightly differently, were you aware of the specific duties that the TMO was under as a result of the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order of 2005?
I'm not aware of the detail of that document.
Was there any document that you recall that was either you received as you joined or you required to be created during your time as managing director, which set out how specifically Repairs Direct would assist the TMO discharge its fire safety obligations?
There was a TMO health and safety document, and Repairs Direct had its own health and safety documents as well. As a principle, the Repairs Direct adopted the TMO's policies and practices.
We'll come on to this later, Mr. Webb, but,
Okay,
but beyond what you already identified, nothing else?
No.
Thank you. Now, were you provided with any advice, whether from Janice Rowe or anyone else at the TMO, about how to ensure that repairs carried out by Repairs Direct operatives did not compromise fire safety?
I don't recall being given any advice by Janice Rowe on that subject, no.
Or anyone else from the TMO?
Not from the TMO, no. But the staff within Repairs Direct were technically qualified, and we were working to specifications that were set by other aspects of the TMO. So maybe a better answer is that, for example, in replacing a door, a flat entrance door, we would work to a specification set by the TMO for a standard fire resistance door known as an FD30.
When you arrived at Repairs Direct, was there any guidance, policy, procedure or process already in place that governed fire safety matters?
Not that I can recall.
Did you yourself receive any training on maintenance of fire safety systems in residential properties, for example, fire doors and the like?
I didn't receive any specific training myself. However, the staff that we would use to do any work on fire safety doors or smoke alarms would be technically qualified, and we refreshed training to ensure that we maintained integrity of things like fire doors.
Did you receive any general fire safety training during your time as MD of Repairs Direct?
Only as much as it would be for fire evacuation procedures in the office areas, etc.
But nothing beyond that in terms of what your operatives were doing and the repairs they were carrying out?
Not that I recall, no.
Now, can we turn to the health and safety regime that was in place at Repairs Direct, and in particular a health and safety audit carried out by Rob Anderson of RHSS, which was carried out in December 2014. Now, before I ask any questions, if we can go to that document, which is at TMO 00863-642/1. Now, first of all, have you seen that document before?
I don't recall seeing it before.
Do you remember Mr. Javot or anyone else making any reference to a health and safety audit by RHSS in handover discussions or any other discussions?
No, I think Mr. Javot made reference to his organisation's own review of health and safety. I don't recall a reference to this.
Now, if we can turn to the executive summary, which is at page 3, we see there in the bottom part of the page 4 key findings and areas for attention, and you'll see full review of the health and safety policy by a competent person. Secondly, training needs to be planned and organised. Thirdly, risk assessments must be suitable and sufficient. And fourthly, inspection and monitoring systems need to be defined and adhered to. Were you aware of any of those specific failings that had been identified in this report when you started work at Repairs Direct?
If I can just take a moment to read through.
Of course.
I was aware that we were not at the standard that we would need to be, not as a result of this report, but from the comments from Mr. Javot and from my own assessments.
Now, if we can go further into this document, and if we could first of all go to page 10. And if we see there in the first item at the top of the page under the heading Board Level Commitment, no details are available that spelt out board-level commitment relevant to Repairs Direct. It's not clear what role the board play in terms of health and safety leadership, and if health and safety is minuted at board meetings for Repairs Direct specifically. With the setup of the company with KCTMO being hazy in some respects, this should be clearly documented. Now, if you hadn't seen this audit report until today, did that criticism resonate with your experience at Repairs Direct?
No, it wouldn't.
Could we turn to page 19 and the second paragraph there? Which said an active training matrix was not located or acknowledged to confirm to the auditor who has or has not been trained in what and when. This is major area of concern in the event of civil or criminal proceedings for demonstrating competence through training. Again, if you hadn't seen this audit report, did the criticism set out there resonate with your experience when you were at Repairs Direct?
No, there was a regular training regime in place.
And if we could finally turn to page 27. Under the heading Section 9, Fire Protection and Prevention, the first observation is this: fire awareness training has not been provided to operatives. Was that still the case when you joined Repairs Direct?
I couldn't say how recently they had fire awareness training, but fire awareness would be part of their training on an ongoing basis.
Now, even if you weren't aware of this audit report, on the basis of the answers you're giving, it sounds, and please shout if this is unfair or insufficiently nuanced, that the deficiencies identified in this report had been remedied by the time you joined.
Some of them have been remedied. They were not perhaps as robust as they could have been in documentation, for example, but it was certainly stronger than this report would have indicated.
Were you satisfied with the clarity of the health and safety leadership provided by the board during your time at Repairs Direct?
I was, yes.
Could we now turn to minutes of an executive team meeting on the 23rd of March 2016? And if we could go to TMO 008529111/4. And if we could look at item 13 at the bottom of the page, it's recorded there that you presented your vision for Repairs Direct. And over the page, in the third bullet point, you noted a gap for a health and safety manager for quality and environment needed.
Yes.
Now, what were your expectations of a health and safety manager at that time, so March 2016?
My expectation was to bring somebody in who would provide governance, assurance, and continued training for health and safety practices for the team, that provided protection for the staff, residents, and those in the proximity of work that we were doing. But somebody who would also help us to achieve ISO level accreditation for health, safety, environment and quality.
When you joined Repairs Direct, who was fulfilling those responsibilities?
There was nobody appointed in post.
And how long had that been the case?
It had been around a year, I believe, if not more.
Can we now turn to the minutes of Repairs Direct Board meeting on the 10th of March 2016, so 13 days before this executive team meeting? Those minutes can be found at RBK 000-59213/3. If we can turn to item 8.1. You'll see it says there this: Graham Webb informed the board that the health and safety manager position was still vacant. He explained that the delay to recruit for the health and safety manager had been the need to fully ascertain the business needs and also build plan for accreditation on various ISO schemes before recruiting for a suitable candidate. He assured the board that he intends to recruit by June 2016. What business needs did you have to ascertain before recruiting?
The business had lacked vision in terms of its direction of travel. And that we wanted to be a responsive repair business. But the staff did not understand whether we wanted to improve that service to residents or any other aspiration for the business. So we needed to establish a strategy for the business, have that strategy approved by the management board, the Repairs Direct board, and the TMO board. And then I wanted to be able to recruit a health and safety professional who could be part of that strategy, so they needed to understand it and to complement that. And by that I mean somebody who has the experience to lead us towards the ISO accreditation, but also who can make health and safety training engaging and resonating with blue-collar workforces. For want of a better phrase, it can be a dry topic. You have to make it engaging, you have to make it land, and to find somebody who can do that is worth taking the extra time to find them.
Just to spell it out, why did you need to build a plan for accreditation on ISO schemes before recruiting?
It's an endorsement that you're working to best practice, which is clearly a good thing, and gave the board reassurance as well as the residents of the borough. B, we had an aspiration, once we were fully delivering a service that was acceptable to the residents and the tenants of the borough, that we'd like to offer a comparable service to leaseholders on a paid-for basis who are living in often the same buildings. Having ISO accreditation was, in my view, a base requirement to be able to offer a commercial paid-for service.
Thank you. Could we look at the final sentence in item 8.1, which says this: the board was assured that the risk, presumably from not having a health and safety manager in position, had mitigated by ensuring that all workforce are fully trained on health and safety issues on the roll. First of all, what do you mean by health and safety issues there?
So regular health and safety matters such as manual handling, slips, trips, falls, the need for hot works permits, those kind of issues, even for office staff around health and safety matters around the office. But to make sure that that training was delivered again in an engaging way. So, for example, we engaged a contractor who didn't do a manual handling course on a projector in a classroom, but took the people out to a van and loaded baths and doors in and out of vans, which is far more relevant and engaging for that kind of workforce.
Now, it's noticeable that the list of issues you identified there did not include fire safety. Can we assume, therefore, that fire safety was not caught in the mitigation measures that were trained to health and to
I did make
staff?
reference to hot works and permits, so welding and roofing works and associated works like that, which would have a fire safety element to them, were included in that training.
So those specific elements of fire safety?
Yes.
Now, could I ask you to go to TMO 100-16680/19? Now, you will not have seen this document before. It's Janice Ray's mid-year performance review for 2016-2017.
Right.
And if you look at the third paragraph, it says this: further work to embed fire safety. And then looking at the final line, discussions with RD, so Repairs Direct, who include in toolbox talks and further discussion with Sam and Derek about the work of subcontractors. Now, for the uninitiated, what is a toolbox talk?
A toolbox talk is a team meeting, most normally for the blue-collar workforce. Normally they're held weekly, and you may cover some business updates, but what you will always do is use the opportunity to do at least one element of training at each event. And you will pick a topic of the week, and staff will be trained on that, and then they'll sign to confirm that they've received that training.
Who provided that training?
So it was often provided by their team leaders or the line managers, and sometimes by an external agency, if that were appropriate to the subject that we were delivering.
Did the talks include training on fire safety issues, to the best of your
In
knowledge?
as much as we would touch on things like hot works and issues like that, yes, it would.
Were you involved in, or indeed aware of, any discussions between Janice Ray, Sam Hart and Derek Singleton about ensuring subcontractor work did not compromise fire safety?
Yes.
And can you give the panel the gist of those discussions?
Whilst I was there, we recontracted our subcontractor framework. So the nature of responsive repairs is that the volume is always higher in the winter than it is in the summer. And also there are certain activities where there is simply not enough demand for you to employ full-time resource on that task. So you have to have a number of subcontractors on your books to do that. When we recontracted our subcontractors, we not only were looking for obviously advantageous commercial terms, but they were required to demonstrate that they had appropriate health and safety training, documentation, insurances in place. I know that was discussed between Janice and Sam and Derek, and also with Shannon McInnes, who was the health and safety manager that I appointed in the business.
Now, I should have asked this as a preliminary question. Am I right in thinking that Sam Hart was your commercial manager from August 2016 onwards?
He was indeed, yes.
And that Derek Singleton was your operations manager from roughly the same time, August 2016?
That's correct, yes.
Now, you referred there to Sharon McInnes, and she started her employment as Repairs Direct Health, Safety, Environment and Quality Manager on the 21st of November 2016.
Shannon McInnes, yes.
Yeah. And so that she started work some 5 or 6 months after the deadline of June that you'd set yourself.
Yes.
Now, while you were recruiting for that role, who was responsible for ensuring that Repairs Direct complied with its health and safety obligations?
As a managing director, that would fall to me.
Now, could we go to TMO 00863-652/1? Now, this is a document, as you can see, entitled on its front page, Health and Safety Policy, Repairs Direct. You'll see in the bottom left, version 1, bottom right, the date February 2015. If we can turn over the page to page 2, looking there, it looks as if this document is a draft. It is, or seems to be, a draft. First of all, can you remember whether this was adopted and approved at any time?
I don't recall it being published, no.
Are you familiar with it? Have you seen this document before?
I saw this document as part of the preparation for today, but I don't recall seeing it at the time I was there.
So you can't help us as to who drafted it?
No, I'm afraid I can't.
Can we assume, therefore, it wasn't distributed to Repairs Direct operatives?
I couldn't say. It predates my time, so I couldn't say whether it was distributed in 2015. I didn't join until 2016.
Now, if we can, notwithstanding what you've said, if we can just go to page 5 in this document and paragraph 1.4, and if that particular paragraph could be magnified briefly. It says there the managing director is ultimately responsible for compliance with health and safety throughout the organisation. Bearing in mind your most recent answer, I assume you'd agree with that.
Absolutely.
Now, could we go to a separate document now, which is TMO 100-16214/1. This is a report, as you can see from its front page, entitled Repairs Direct Health and Safety Management System, Gap Analysis, dated February 2017. First of all, have you seen that report before?
I have, yes.
Now, Shannon McInnes, says that she wrote the report, and she says also in her witness statement, I'll give the reference, we don't need to go to it, it's paragraph 60 of her statement, which is at TMO 00899-676/4. She says this, that when she first joined Repairs Direct, so that's November 2016, she wanted to have a clear understanding of what policies and procedures had been implemented in the past and how these were operating in practice. The gap analysis report was therefore produced to help her formulate a health and safety strategy going forward. Now, was there a health and safety strategy at this point, i.e. February 2017?
We would have fallen under the umbrella of the TMO's health and safety strategy, though I recognise that we needed to have one for Repairs Direct because the nature of the work that the staff did fundamentally differed from those in primarily administrative roles. When Shannon first started, I asked her to complete a gap analysis so I could understand the fundamental differences between where we were and where we needed to be.
And so it's a result of your direction that this gap analysis was prepared?
It was, yes.
Now, was there a formal decision either in your time or to the extent to which you know before your time that the Repairs Direct would adopt the TMO's health and safety practices, or was it simply an informal practice absent any specific health and safety strategy for Repairs Direct itself?
There was a formal agreement that we would adopt all TMO policies and procedures unless there were a fundamental reason why the activities of Repairs Direct required a standalone document.
And did that agreement was that agreement reached before you joined or after you joined?
I don't recall whether it was in place before I joined, but it was made very clear. I was part of that conversation when I got there, and I was very clear that that was the right position to be.
And so it happened fairly soon after you joined?
I believe so, yes.
So the first quarter of 2016 or thereabouts?
Of that order.
Thank you. Now, if we could turn to page 3 in this document and item 4.3, and it's the first paragraph really that deals with training, and it sets out there this: health and safety training is a legal requirement and Repairs Direct is falling short of its obligation. And if we go down to the 4th paragraph on this under this section on this page, there is limited evidence of training certificates for operatives and contractors, and no evidence of certificates for temporary workers. Mandatory training requirements had not been established, or frequencies for renewal defined or monitored. Now, in light of your assurance to the Repairs Direct Board on the 10th of March 2016 that risk of not having a health and safety manager had been appropriately mitigated by ensuring that the workforce had been trained on health and safety matters, can you explain this unambiguous finding?
I felt, and I recall having this conversation with Shannon, I felt that she'd taken a particularly negative view, that often the training was occurring, but what was not occurring was the paperwork to evidence it. However, I did agree that for temporary staff, who we may bring on plumbing staff at short notice to cover absence, for example, that we were not robust enough in providing training before they went out and performed live jobs.
Now, what steps were taken to remedy the deficiency that Ms McInnes had identified here?
I can't recall the exact action. As a result of this gap analysis, Shannon worked with Derek Singleton, the operations manager, to establish an action plan, and he and Sam would review that in our weekly operations meetings to make sure we're making progress on closing the gaps in the plan.
Can you remember specifically what was done to ensure that all training was appropriately recorded?
I can't recall, sorry.
Now, if we can turn over the page to paragraph 4.4 and the second paragraph under that heading, which relates to contractor management, it says this: currently there is a procedure for vetting contractors, but no formal monitoring or inspection of health and safety management or work practices thereafter. Did you accept at the time that there was no formal arrangements for the monitoring and inspection?
No, I didn't.
You disagreed with that?
I disagree with that statement.
And on what basis did you disagree with that statement?
So our contractors, when we were signing them up to work for us, we would review their health and safety policies and documents and training records. We would also inspect their work on an ad hoc basis, so unannounced visits by supervisors or by our surveyors to look at the work in practice, and then post completion of the work, we would also inspect to make sure the work could be done to a satisfactory standard and discuss the work with the resident.
Again, mindful of your previous answer, was the issue here that those processes weren't formally recorded, and that was Shannon McInnes's gripe?
The post inspections were recorded, the ad hoc inspections weren't, so that may have been the issue.
Now, in respect of this report, Shannon McInnes said in paragraph 16 of her statement, and the reference, we don't need to go to it, is TMO 008999676/4. She says this: I cannot recall the specific actions taken following the production of my report. I did not feel health and safety was a priority at Repairs Direct. This was one of the reasons why I eventually left. Health and safety concerns were more talk than action. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, and I'm disappointed to hear that that's the statement that she's made.
Now, on what basis would you disagree with her?
I appointed a health and safety manager into a role that had been vacant for some time because health and safety was a fundamental concern for me. And I wanted to be sure that whilst there was health and safety support from the TMO, from Janice Ray and her team, we had somebody within my own team who looked at the very specific circumstances in which my team worked and the risks that presented to them, to other residents, and to the general public. I think that fundamentally disagree with her suggestion that it was all talk and no action.
Could we turn to TMO 0084 228? Now, as you see from the torrential addressee list, Janice Ray distributed papers for the TMO Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 13th of June 2017, so a day before the fire. You're not named as one of the recipients, but Shannon McInnes and Derek Singleton are. Now, this email attached a report entitled Health and Safety Progress Report Repairs Direct, and that can be found at TMO 00845 Do you recall seeing that document in June 2017? Please shout if you'd like to scroll through it to refresh your memory if needed.
I don't particularly recall seeing it, but it was some time ago, so I may have done, but I don't recall it.
Would you be able to assist the panel as to who would have written the Health and Safety Progress Report for Repairs Direct? Would it have been Miss McInnes?
Shannon would have written that, absolutely, Shannon McInnes.
And were these types of report regularly produced?
Yes.
And if so, is it therefore likely that you would have read it at the time?
It's possible, yes. So Shannon would have produced a regular update and I would have read that.
Is it slightly more than possible? You've re-emphasised to the panel your commitment to health and safety. Given this deals with health and safety progress, is it more likely than possible that you would have read it?
Yes.
Could we turn to paragraph, or rather a separate document, which is TMO 00845
I think that's the one we've got on the screen, isn't it?
Sorry, apologies, yes. Now, we can see at paragraph 1, it lists various health and safety procedures at the bottom of the page. And then it goes on to say in the final paragraph, additional operational procedures that are needed to ensure proper health and safety compliance will be required. Mm-hmm. And if we see at paragraph 1.2, it records that a general health and safety policy specific to Repairs Direct has been drafted.
Yes.
And then we've got at paragraph 1.3, 2 operational procedures adapted from TMO documents. Now, are you able to assist the panel as to why at this stage a new health and safety policy had been drafted?
I can't specifically say why at this stage. I do recall that of all the policies that the TMO had, we did believe that Repairs Direct required a health and safety policy of its own.
Looking at paragraph 1.3, are the 2 procedures set out there represent the sum total of the health and safety policies and procedures that were in place just before the fire, in addition to the health and safety policy?
I believe that the Repairs Direct Health and Safety Policy, there had been one before this. I believe I'd signed one early in my time there. I can understand why we would want operational procedures and guidance on risk assessment and accident reporting, but I couldn't answer any more specifically to what you're asking.
To the extent you can, is it therefore correct to surmise that there was no operational procedure that specifically governed repairs to fire safety systems, including fire doors and the like?
No, that's not correct.
Are you saying there was a written document which governed those matters, or are you saying there were informal arrangements that govern those matters?
So it was standard practice, and I believe it was documented. For example, that if my staff, who would have been carpenters, for example, were looking at a flat front entrance door, which would have been an FD30 rated fire door, that they were expected to only repair like for like, so they wouldn't drill new holes that would impact the integrity of the fire resistance. They would only replace like for like, so door furniture, letterboxes, hinges, whatever. And if it were not possible to do so, that they would be required to replace the door with another fire door, and our systems only allowed them to purchase an FD30 door to replace that. So those documentations were in existence and were a specification from the TMO.
Thank you. Now, if we turn over the page to paragraph 2.2, It says there, under the heading Health and Safety Management, Armada training provided a 2-day course to Repairs Direct management teams, supervisors and quantity surveyors. The objective of this training was to provide managers with training on fundamentals of health and safety. Did you attend that training?
I don't believe so.
Even if you didn't attend, are you aware or not whether it covered fire safety?
I'm afraid I don't recall.
Could we turn to TMO 008700929? Now, this is an untitled document dated 2017. The date appears from the file name, which appears to refer to Repairs Direct health and safety duties. Shannon McInnes says in her statement, and it's paragraphs 20 to 21, TMO 008999676/7, we don't need to go to it, that she was the author, and it was an unfinished draft which was neither published nor adopted. Now, looking at that, is your position still that there was a health and safety policy in place before the fire?
I believe there was, yes.
Now, can we now turn to a separate topic, which is coordination with the TMO on matters of health and safety, including fire safety? Now, could we go to TMO 008441515/5? Now, these are minutes of a TMO, Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 31st of July 2015, so before you started. And it's recorded at item 11, we see, there under the heading Repairs Direct, that Barbara Matthews advised in the second line that there should be, quote, common policies and procedures for both KCTMO, and that Janice Ray should have audit rights over Repairs Direct health and safety systems. Now, when you started in January 2016, your understanding is that there were common health and safety policies and procedures in place.
Yes.
Is that fair?
That's correct.
Now, do you recall whether Janice Ray in fact had audit rights over Repairs Direct health and safety obligations and their performance?
I don't recall that was a stated right, but should Janice have asked to have reviewed any of our activity, then I would not have had an objection to that.
Do you remember Janice Ray seeking to exercise her audit rights?
I don't recall, no.
What was your understanding of Janice Ray's role in relation to Repairs Direct health and safety duties and their performance?
Janice Ray provided the TMO view. We sought to adhere to that as close as we could, and she was also a very useful point of conversation if there were some debate over a technical requirement. So if there were, for example, if the assets and regeneration team were looking to change specification, then there was often a conversation between them, our operational team, and Janice in terms of the nature of that, the nature of the change, the operational impact of it, our ability to maintain it, for example.
Do you remember Janice Ray her advice and guidance ever been sought in relation to a fire safety matter? To the best of your knowledge.
Not to the best of my knowledge. I mean, we spoke with Janice on a regular basis on a range of issues.
Now, on the 19th of January 2016, so a week or so after you started work at Repairs Direct, you attended a meeting of the TMO's Health and Safety Committee. Now, is it right that you were a regular attendee of that meeting?
Yes, not every meeting, but I did attend it on a regular basis.
Why did you attend the TMO's Health and Safety Committee meeting?
Because it allowed us to share Repairs Direct health and safety performance with them, and if there were any learning available from them, we could adopt that within Repairs Direct.
If you weren't able to attend, who would attend on your behalf, as it were?
Shannon McInnes or Derek Singleton, my operations manager.
Now, if we could go to the minutes of that meeting, which are at TMO 100012670. If we go to the second page and item 1.11, and you'll see there it's minuted MB, I think is Martin Barr, is that right?
Possible.
had agreed to look at procedures for reviewing insight reports, clarifying what is outstanding and what priority these have, and acknowledged the need to ensure there is an effective escalation procedure for ESAs reporting health and safety issues. MB had confirmed that he would be meeting with Olivia Hutchison on the 20th of January and with GW, presumably you, the following week to discuss this. He will then produce a draft escalation procedure. SJ, presumably Sasha Jevons, asked for clarification on timescale. Janice Ray to request MB aims to bring draft to next meeting. Can you remember now whether you met Martin Barr to discuss this particular issue?
I can't recall whether I met him to discuss a particular issue. In my first few weeks, I met with many internal managers on a range of topics.
So you can't remember whether there's any particular outcome?
I can't remember this meeting in particular, no.
Was there an equivalent procedure for repairs direct operatives and supervisors who identified health and safety issues during jobs to escalate or report those issues?
Yes, there was.
And what was that procedure?
So, depending on the nature of the issue, at its most risk, at its highest risk, if you like, if they encountered a dangerous or aggressive resident where they felt that they were in danger, they were empowered to walk away. If they encountered a piece of work where they felt that doing that piece of work created risk to them or others, they were empowered to walk away. If they discovered an issue that needed to be notified, they would either call the planner, so one of the people in the office, and notify them of that, or they'd talk to their supervisor. And then depending on the nature of the severity of the matter, someone might immediately attend, or it would be arranged for a follow-up to happen.
Thank you. On the 10th of March 2016, you attended a meeting of the Repairs Direct Board, and the minute can be found at RBK 000 59213/1. There we go, we can see you as second on the list of attendees. And if we turn over to page 2 and item 5.4, and the second paragraph, it says there, the board then discussed the policy needs of the company, so that's Repairs Direct. Graham Webb suggested the company could adopt the parent company's policies as a way to strive to attain the same standards. Now, is that really the thinking that underpinned the agreement to adopt other standards that you referred to earlier in your
Yes, these were broader, well thought through standards. It made entire sense to adopt those unless there was a material difference to the work that we were undertaking.
Right. And do you remember on analysis whether there were any material differences that prevented you adopting a TMO policy?
The only one that I can recall is the health and safety policy.
And as part of those discussions, was fire safety ever discussed as being one of those material differences that required a bespoke Repairs Direct solution?
I don't recall that being discussed now.
Now, on the 8th of April 2016, Janice Ray emailed you a number of documents, but included her fire safety strategy review, and that was sent in advance of the TMO's Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 12th of April 2016. Now, the review included a current version of the TMO's fire safety strategy, which was dated November 2013. Now, can you remember whether you read the review and the fire safety strategy?
And so this was a document bundled in advance of a health and safety meeting?
Yes, in April 2016.
Yes, it was a matter of routine. I would have read all of the documents in advance of the meeting.
Did you understand the fire safety strategy to be one of those common policies shared by TMO and Repairs Direct?
I don't recall particularly, but I would imagine it would be so, yes.
You don't recall, though, any specific discussion as to whether that strategy applied or would be adopted by Repairs Direct?
I don't recall any discussion as to whether there was a need for Repairs Direct to have a different policy.
Now, on the 17th of January 2017, you were sent a report by Guy Sharma, a senior auditor for RBKC, which was entitled Final Report Repairs Direct Systems Review. Now, that email can be found at RBK 000 60148. So just to remind you of what was sent and when. Now, can you remember, why was that review carried out?
So Guy Sharma was part of the internal audit team, as I recall, from RBKC. they had a rolling programme of auditing different aspects of the TMO's performance, and Repairs Direct featured on that at a regular interval. And he would come and review, and therefore, from time to time, he would come and review our systems of work, and to ensure that data that we were reporting was independent and accurate, and accurately reflected the service that was being delivered.
Thank you. If we can go to RBK 000060149/18 and item 7, we see there that the management action plan governs repair quality monitoring. And the review recommended, we see there in the far right-hand column, that the selection of jobs for post-inspection should be random and automated. And in the management response, it records that the post-inspection were completed by RD supervisors and repairs team surveyors. Now, can you remember now what percentage of repairs were inspected after the work had been done?
I believe it was between 10 and 15%.
And was that a sort of prescribed sample amount, or was
Yes.
it just... Yes. Was the approach to post-inspecting fire safety repairs any different to other repairs?
No.
Was consideration ever given to post-inspecting a higher percentage of fire safety repairs, or targeting them specifically for post-inspection?
No.
Now, can we now look at the process for carrying out responsive fire safety repairs, and in particular the process for actioning fire safety repairs raised by residents or estate staff? Now, for repairs raised by residents and TMO estate staff, was any training or guidance provided to Repairs Direct staff on how to identify a repair that might affect fire safety?
So any fire-related repair which was identified through the regular estate inspections or identified to Janice Ray's health and safety team, the repair request on our computer system was raised by Janice's team, and the job would have a prefix FRA, so it was fire-related works. We then had Shannon McInnes, in fact, as health and safety manager, would have oversight over all of those repairs to make sure they were completed in a timely way, and to make sure that she liaised with Janice on any reason for any delay in that process.
And so, in short, there was a process by which the TMO's health and safety team was notified of a fire safety repair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, if we can go to TMO 100126668/4, and this is the TMO's fire safety strategy of November 2013. And we see there at paragraph 5 at the bottom of the page, it sets out the management arrangements for fire safety. And paragraph 5.1, if we go over the page, that's the first paragraph, our penultimate sentence says that repairs raised to fire doors, self-closes, etc. are given priority. Sorry, the text is somewhat dense, but it's in that top paragraph at the top of the page. Did Repairs Direct give priority to repairs to fire doors and self-closes?
So every repair, whether it was given a degree of priority as to whether it was routine, urgent or emergency, and that priority when the health and safety team raised that repair, they would set the priority to it, and that would dictate the timescale that we had to complete the repair.
And I suppose asking the question again, just emphasising it was specifically directed towards fire doors and self-closers. Were those routinely given, for example, an urgent rating, or were they treated as routine, or indeed were they treated as emergency?
So from my recollections, they would certainly not have been treated as routine, but the priority would have been set by Janice Ray and her team when they raised the task, not by my team.
Are you able to give the panel a gist from your experience of whether such works were rated as urgent, for example, or emergency?
It would depend on the nature of the deficiency. If a fire door was missing, then I would absolutely expect that to be an emergency and a same-day response.
Thank you.
If it was easing and adjusting because it was banging as it closed, it may have been regarded as an urgent response, which I think from memory was a 3 or 5 day fix.
And following on, that was going to be my next question. In terms of emergency, what was the time requirement for completion of those?
24 hours.
Thank you. Now, can I ask you about the process for actioning repairs arising out of fire risk assessments or LFB inspections? Now, if we go to TMO 00860-824/1, we have here email correspondence on the 5th of September 2016 between Derek Singleton, so your ops manager,
Yes.
Chelsea McRickus, a repairs direct service administrator, and Sam Hart, who's the commercial manager who we've discussed before. And it is primarily concerned with the allocation of fire risk assessment repairs to GONI. Now, first of all, who or what is GONI, G-O-N-I?
GONI were a subcontractor that we used for certain works.
Now, within Repairs Direct, who would usually decide whether a fire safety repair should be carried out in-house or should be subcontracted?
If there was a request for any work of any nature to be subcontracted, the commercial team had to give approval for that because there was obviously expenditure related to that.
And what criteria, in broad terms, were applied by the commercial team before subcontracting happened?
It would be a balance of looking at the urgency of the work, whether the skill sets existed within our team, how the current workload on our team, if the skill set existed, or whether it would simply be more effective to outsource that work to a competent supplier.
So it would be someone in the commercial team, for example, who decided whether a Repairs Direct operative had the requisite fire safety skills to repair a fire door.
So the Repairs Direct operatives had were trained in whatever skill sets. Their skills were noted on our system. We knew what their skill sets were. The planning team would be able to advise if somebody had the necessary skill set. So a carpenter can rehang a door, be it a fire door or any other kind of door. If we have a large package of doors to be fixed in the same location, it can be easier and more efficient to give that to a subcontractor who can dedicate a team just to walk through the entire area and clear all the tasks at the same time.
Thank you. Now, just looking at the email from Derek Singleton, which is at the top of this page,
Yes.
and looking in particular at the second paragraph, he says, it's obviously entitled FRA Works, he said in the final sentence, the only thing I'm not sure that they, i.e. GONI, would be able to do is the fire stopping, as we may need this to be certificated. So looking at it really from the different end of the prism, how would Repairs Direct satisfy itself that subcontractors were capable of doing fire safety related work, such as fire stopping?
So when a subcontractor was being signed up as to work for us, we would look at the skill sets that they had. We would take references from previous employers, and we would look at the qualifications of their team. There are certain activities which are obviously more prescribed. Fire stopping work is a heavily prescribed piece of activity, as you would imagine, and therefore it tends to be much more specialist suppliers that you use for fire stopping work.
Was anyone within Repairs Direct specifically responsible for monitoring the progress of repairs arising out of FRA actions?
Yes, Shannon McInnes.
Now, could I go to CST quadruple 02174? And we see roughly halfway down that page, Peter Madison emailed Alex Bosman and yourself and Teresa Brown, copying in Janice Ray, on the 21st of October 2016. And the subject matter was Carl Stokes's inspections before LFB audits of Grenfell Tower, Barrington Walk and 9 Colville Square. And the email says this: attached are the results of Carl Stokes's pre-inspections of Grenfell, Barrington and Colville. I've asked Alex to coordinate action within assets and regeneration that needs to be progressed in the next couple of days. I've also asked him to check in with Graham to ensure that responsive repair issues are in hand. Going forward, I've agreed with Janice that representatives from A&R, RD, Housing Management will be invited to attend inspections with Carl Stokes and Adrian. This will help ensure that there is a clear and shared understanding of standards and actions required, using Carl and Adrian's expertise to raise awareness with our staff. It will also be a good way of ensuring that ownership of actions is pushed down to the right level. I also hope that it will help develop a better understanding of the responsibilities for each team and improve the communication when matters need escalation. Now, what was your role generally in relation to monitoring responsive repairs arising from Carl Stokes's inspections and in particular his FRAs?
We would have handled those in the same way as we would with FRA related work. But I do recall that as a result of this, we used to send one of our supervisors to accompany these tours so that we had a very clear understanding of the exact location, the exact issue, and how we needed to resolve it.
And that was routinely done, was it?
Yes.
And did you find that it achieved the aim that Mr. Madison set out for this exercise, i.e. better understanding of the responsibilities of each team and an improvement in communication?
I believe so, yes.
Was there a concern at this time that FRA actions and the standards required to close them out satisfactorily were not clearly understood by those carrying out the repairs?
I don't believe so, no.
Now can I turn to the topic of the backlog of responsive repairs, and in particular the FRA responsive repairs. And for this purpose, can we now go to back to the minutes of the TMO Health and Safety Committee, which is the first one you attended on the 19th of January 2016. And they can be found at TMO 100-12670/4. And we see at top of the page, item 3.1, in respect of FRA actions, it's recorded that JW and BM, so Janice Ray and Barbara Matthews, highlighted the main points of the FRA summaries. In particular, it was emphasised that significant progress had been made with completing the backlog of outstanding actions by contract management and by RD, so Repairs Direct. Now, holding that there, if we can go to a separate document, which is TMO 100-11910. This is the summary of FRAs that were submitted for the purposes of this meeting on the 19th of January 2016. And we can see that there were 172, looking at responsive repairs, 172 outstanding. It's in the penultimate box from the bottom. And reading across, there are 18 partially completed responsive repair actions. And if we go over the page, we see that the outstanding actions are broken down in relation to their age. And we see 54 responsive repairs that are 4 to 6 months old, 57 over 7 months, and 55 in excess of 12 months. Now, this was your first meeting, your first health and safety meeting, I should say. Were you concerned by the number and the age of the outstanding actions that are summarised here in this document?
Of course, yes.
And what was your particular concern looking at the numbers?
The age profile concerned me. There are legitimate reasons why some work can take a prolonged period to resolve, but there seemed to be a problem in closing out, and there seemed to be a problem in closing out older repairs.
Now, in her evidence, Barbara Matthews cited as her optimum number something between 10 and 20. Now, given your experience, mindful of the extent of the TMO stock, was there an optimum number of outstanding actions that you considered to be reasonable or tolerable?
Well, I mean, your optimum number is 0, of course. I wouldn't want to put a target on it, because any target that's set other than 0 is almost an acceptance of something being substandard. But certainly I wasn't happy with the volume and the age of some of these.
Were you told why there was such a backlog, particularly backlog of old actions?
I do recall doing some investigation into that. Many of the properties on the RPKC portfolio are of some age. Almost every fire door is bespoke, so everything has to be made from scratch, which obviously prolongs the period of time it takes to do it. There were also a number where perhaps the fire doors were being warped from a leak, to give you an example. And a leak in a high-storey block can take some time to track. It can leak through many, many floors before it actually reaches the point where you find it and it causes the problem. And they are very, very difficult to track back.
Did your investigations allay the concerns you originally held when you saw the raw data as summarised for the purposes of the Health and Safety Committee?
No, we still needed to do better.
Can you remember that when you joined the TMO, whether there was a plan in place for ensuring that the number, and particularly the number of old actions, was substantially reduced?
No, there was no one at the time I joined Repairs Direct. No one within Repairs Direct was owning the FRA actions. So that's one of the first things I put in place as a result of this meeting, was to have somebody who could own them and fight to make sure they were being pursued.
And who became the owner?
So initially I used a gentleman who was the customer service manager, whose name escapes me, forgive me. And then when Shannon McInnes joined us, I transferred that responsibility to her.
So as of November 2016, it was
Yes.
Shannon McInnes.
Yes.
Now, if we can go back to the minutes themselves, which is at TMO 100-126-70/4, if we go to item 3.2, it's recorded there that PM, so that's Peter Madison, asked for a copy of the detail behind this report, so the one we've just been looking at. Peter Madison noted that the system should be more robust to ensure actions are escalated if they are out of time or allocated to staff who are no longer with the organisation. GW Graham Webb advised the process will be reviewed to avoid outstanding historic actions. And so the review, is that the investigation that you've just given the detail of?
Exactly. So I went away to look into this list and create and put in place that process where we had an owner within the business.
Thank you. Could we now turn to a separate document, which is TMO 00843644?
Are we going to a new...
We're not.
Topic?
There are 4 further questions on this topic, which
right.
just for the
Just
sake
thought
of
I'd ask.
cleanliness, I'd like to get finished. Thank you, sir. It shouldn't take us beyond 11:30. Thank you. So this is a Health, Safety and Facilities team update from the 4th of February 2016, prepared by Janice Ray, I think. Now, she reported, you'll see it, item 3, FRA and health and safety actions, significant progress made with volume of actions outstanding for Repairs Direct and contract management. Barbara and I have met with Sasha, Pete, Alex and Graham Webb to look at the detail of the actions being raised and how each are to be progressed, accepted that there is no need to continue with these meetings but just to identify the key trends, have now agreed an improved procedure with Repairs Direct which should enable work to be progressed in a timely manner once backlog cleared. Now, do you remember agreeing an improved procedure with Janice Ray?
I don't remember the specifics of it. I'm not surprised by the comment, but I don't remember the specifics.
So you won't be able to help the panel as to what the particular arrangements were?
I'm sorry, but no,
improved?
I can't.
Now, it recorded here that, in effect, the procedure would only be effective once the backlog was cleared. What did you do to ensure the backlog was cleared from the Repairs Direct angle?
When I joined Repairs Direct, and forgive me, I cannot remember the volume of FRA actions at the point I started. It was on an improving trend, but wasn't within what we would have regarded as being an acceptable parameter. So we were reducing the number, we were reducing the age profile, but we weren't yet where we wanted to be.
And would you monitor the backlog routinely?
Yes, so it would come up in my monthly management teams, and it would also be discussed at the Health and Safety Committee chaired by Barbara Matthews.
Am I right in understanding that timely completion of FRA actions was not the subject of a key performance indicator?
It was not on our headline key performance indicators, no.
Can you help, given that the FRA backlog had clearly been a long-running issue, are you able to assist the panel as to why the reduction of that backlog wasn't the subject of a KPI?
So our headline KPIs and my experience in managing large operational businesses, if you have more than 8 headline KPIs, it's very difficult to actually absorb the content. They will give you the general sense of direction for the business. If something is causing a problem, it will generally cause one of those KPIs, if you choose the right ones, to indicate there is a problem behind it. So a prolonged period of time to close out an FRA action would have extended the average number of days to complete repairs, which was one of our key performance indicators. So if that KPI had started to become adverse, that would prompt us to look into the background beneath it. But it wasn't part of the core 8 KPI that we would report on responsive repairs.
Thank you. Why was it accepted that there was no need to continue meetings about outstanding FRA actions?
From my recollection, we were making good progress, and the direction of travel was good.
Now, can we turn to the FRA action statistics that were produced for the TMO's Health and Safety Committee in January 2017, so a year after you joined? And if we go to TMO 100-15963, and if we look at responsive repair, which again, penultimate row at the bottom, we see there are 11 outstanding and 5 partially complete responsive repair actions. Now, how had Repairs Direct achieved such a reduction in the outstanding repairs?
Through those actions that I've described, having real ownership and somebody championing each of those repairs and ensuring that it was completed on time and to the right quality.
Can you remember whether most of the reduction had been achieved before Shannon McInnes joined?
We were making good progress before she joined in November, and then obviously this was, what I think, 2 months later.
Thank you. Could we turn to TMO 100-21548, which are the minutes of the TMO's Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 13th of June 2017? Now, you're not recorded as attending, but if we turn to page 3 and item 3.3, we see there it's recorded, Janice Ray advised that she had collated all the responsive repair items that were currently not complete and had provided Derek Singleton with a spreadsheet identifying the details of each and the repair stage it had stopped at. Derek had agreed to investigate, advise and progress these works. SM, must be Shannon McInnes, agreed to raise with Derek and report back to Janice Ray by 23rd of June. Can we take it from that the reduction of FRA responsive repair actions achieved in January 2017 had not been sustained in the first half of 2017?
I couldn't say from that minute.
Now, if we stay in this document but go to stay on page 3 and look at item 3.4 over the page, and it says HC, if we go back, it's my fault, go back to 3.3, and we see at the bottom, HC raised concern that he had witnessed a number of missed appointments lately and other delays in completing responsive works, and that he had raised this with PJ Philip. BM asked SM to take this back and raise with her colleagues. Now, HC, I think, is Hash Shamshun, is that right?
Yes, I would imagine so.
Did Shannon McInnes communicate this information to you?
I don't recall her raising this to me particularly, no.
Are you able to help with why appointments were being missed and there were other delays in completing responsive repair works?
Responsive repairs are largely predictable, but sometimes when you go to fix what you believe is a dripping tap, it turns out to be a burst pipe behind a wall. And so what you think is a 30-minute appointment turns into a 2-hour appointment. It was standard practice to do what we call dynamic rescheduling. So our system allowed us to change appointments, so which staff went to which appointment during the day. But some days the world plots against you and you just can't get to every appointment on time, sadly.
Thank you. Sir, I've come to the end of that particular topic.
Right, well, that is a convenient point at which to have a break, isn't it? Mr. Webb, we're going to have a short break now. We'll come back, please, at 20 to 12, and then we'll resume then. And I have to ask you, please, not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it while you're out of the room.
Of course, sir.
All right, thank you. Would you like to go to the usher, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. 20 to 12.
Thank you, sir.
Could you ask Mr. Webb to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Webb, you ready to carry on? Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, when you're ready, Mr. Kinnear.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Webb, can we now turn to the backlog of responsive repairs and reporting performance? Could we first turn to TMO 008405116/3, which is the minutes of an executive team meeting on the 24th of February 2016. Thank you. And you didn't attend this meeting, but we see roughly a third of the way down the page under the heading Repairs Direct in the fourth line, it says this, graph, work in progress, £4,000 jobs overall, 1,045,000. Barbara Matthews, these are not necessarily whole jobs. Some jobs need to be closed. Barbara Matthews thinks this is about process. Graham is getting staff in to try and clear the backlog. Disquiet about level of the WIP. I think that's works in progress, isn't it?
Yes, it should be WIP, work in progress, yes.
Graham is working towards £500,000 or 1 to 2 million, it's not clear, by year end. We need an explanation why. Surplus, payroll costs lower. How do we maintain getting the WIP down? Paul, the new chair of the board, will be challenging. Was that backlog all in relation to responsive repairs, can you remember?
Yes, if I can clarify, so where it says £4,000, that's 4,000 jobs as a count of jobs rather than value. And when you raise a job, the nature of responsive repairs, when you raise a job, you use a system which effectively diagnoses the job and allows you to attribute a cost to that job. Hence, you can say that the WIP was valued at around £1 million at that point.
Now, in answer to my question, was that backlog all in relation to responsive repairs?
Yes.
Would it have included FRA-related repairs?
Yes, it would.
Barbara Matthews thought the backlog was about process. Did you agree with that assessment at the time?
Process was certainly a contributing factor.
What were the problems afflicting process?
So some of the issues were that jobs were not being closed down sufficiently. So we may have completed the work on site, but if the operative had a problem with his handset, he may not have been able to close the job down, and if there was an open job in WIP rather than a completed repair, for example.
What was the basis for the disquiet about level of the WIP?
4,000 jobs is 4,000 residents who have something broken in their home, and that's not acceptable.
What steps did you take to clear the backlog at this stage?
Okay, so again, it was around structure, around giving staff some very clear objectives, and also to put some greater focus onto our planning. So in the office we had, from memory, 4 staff who, whilst we had a computer system which did most of the planning, we had 4 staff who could manipulate that to get the most out of the day. If you want to clear the work, then the more jobs you can get completed by the operatives in a day, the quicker you'll chew through a backlog.
Now, can I turn to the Matters Arising Action Log, which can be found at TMO 008625447/1. Sorry, /11, I should say. And if we look at item 2, which is review of KPIs. Now, that was an action allocated to you and Sasha Jevons to complete arising from the Repairs Direct Board meeting on the 10th of March 2016. And we see in the update column, which is at the far right-hand side, it's recorded, completed and revised suite of KPI agreed with TMO board, reported monthly/quarterly. Did you review and revise Repairs Direct KPIs with Sasha Jevons after the board meeting on the 10th of March 2016?
I proposed a number of changes to the KPIs that I felt would more accurately reflect the customer experience and also reflect changes in the responsive repairs market about how to compare one service with another.
Now, a TMO board meeting was held on the 31st of March 2016. We go to TMO 100444882. We find the agenda. If we can go to page 17, which It's described at the top as Appendix 2. It's also described as Appendix B, which is the performance update, referred to at item 14 of the agenda. Now, it sets out the proposed KPIs for Repairs Direct. Now, were those the KPIs that you had proposed to Sasha Jevons, or had they been altered before it reached this final stage?
No, the 2016-17 targets were those that I proposed to the Repairs Direct board, which included Sasha Jevons, and once the Repairs Direct board supported my proposals, they were taken to the TMO board for approval.
Thank you. Now, if we look on the far left-hand side, the second entry under the heading Responsive Repairs, Repairs Direct, says average days to complete a responsive repair. Now, that was added, and percentage of non-emergency repairs completed and target removed. Can you explain the rationale for the addition and the removal?
So average days to complete a responsive repair is a very effective way of understanding the impact to a resident of having something broken in their home. And that tracked the moment from which they recorded a fault with us to the moment to which that repair was completed. And as we can all imagine, sitting in your home with a leaking tap for 10 days is something that you have to find quite uncomfortable. Therefore, tracking our performance and shortening the number of days it took to complete a repair was a very good measure of the service we were providing to our customers.
Now, volume of outstanding repairs broken down by age was not specifically proposed. Can you explain why?
Because the other metrics in that list would expose an aging profile. So, for example, if you had a large number of repairs that you were completing that were 3 or perhaps 4 months old, then your score on the average days to complete a responsive repair would go up, and it would prompt a further investigation.
Given you were mindful of ensuring KPIs reflected what was going on, what we know was going on was that there was a continuing problem with the backlog of FRA actions. Now, mindful of that history, mindful that the previous month there'd been 4,000 jobs outstanding, wouldn't volume of outstanding jobs broken down by age have been a useful practical KPI, bearing in mind the particular experience of the Repairs Direct?
It could have been a consideration, I would agree. However, the value of WIP, or work in progress, was included in our financial consideration, and the other metrics on here would have flagged growth in backlogs.
Can we turn now to a meeting of the Repairs Direct Board on the 15th of December 2016, which is at RBK 000 59125. We see you're listed third on the rota of attendees, and if we can go to page 2 and item 5.3, it says this: work in progress was within target. An aged analysis of WIP by job profile was agreed to be brought to the next meeting. It was confirmed all jobs outstanding before June 2016 would be cleared by the end of 2016. Why was an aged analysis of work in progress requested at that meeting? From recollection,
having brought the overall volume and value of work in progress to be within the target we set ourselves, the board were keen to understand whether there were some particularly old jobs that were hanging around that we would miss by just looking at the headline values. The nature of some repairs, like leaks, as I described earlier, can take some time to root through, and that's why the board would have asked to see that.
Now, looking at the record that WIP was within target, now, admittedly, this was a meeting in December 2016, but we know certainly in February 2016 there were 4,000 outstanding jobs. Can you help us as to what target was applied for the purposes of making this statement to the board?
From my recollection, I can't recall the volume of WIP. I can recall that we set ourselves a target that the value of WIP should be below £500,000. You do need a degree of work in progress to keep your workforce busy and to have some predictability about the need to subcontract work over coming periods.
Now, the next Repairs Direct Board meeting was on the 8th of March 2017, and we can find the minutes at TMO 00862 And if we go to page 10, sorry, these are the board papers rather than the minutes. We find here the analysis of aged works in progress just following on from the December meeting.
Yes.
And if we could just look at the bottom of this page, so we need to demagnify, and you'll see at the very bottom there, file name Webb, etc. Had you generated these statistics?
It's possible. I don't recall, but it is possible.
Who else would have done if it weren't you?
It's one of the financial support team, but it would have passed to me. I generally collated the board pack, so it would have been requested by me and then reviewed by me as I put the board pack together.
And so you would have scrutinised the accuracy of the data being put before the board. Now, can we look at the top graph entitled Aged WIP Volume? Now, to the lay eye, it appears to show at least 1,000 repairs are outstanding from October 2016 through to January 2017. First of all, have I read that bar chart correctly?
It's around 100 jobs from October 2000, not 1,000.
So you don't add them all up?
No, so in this example, there are 100 jobs that were raised in October that, as of the time of collating that report, were still open and not completed.
Understood. Now, can we look at the minutes of this particular meeting, which can be found at TMO 00894303? And if we can go to page 2 and item 3.4. You see at the top of the page there, it says an age analysis of WIP was distributed. It was noted that 50% of the works predated 2016. There were a number of complex leak repairs. In view of the MD, it was not an unusual profile for a business like RD. The committee discussed the target WIP and the number of jobs this equated to in value. It was noted that the automated system would assist. However, this was not fully complete as there was a coding issue IT were as yet unable to resolve. It was agreed that this issue would be reported back through the MD's report. First of all, why was it not an unusual profile in your considered view?
Responsive repairs tend to have a very seasonal profile. You have less works raised in the summer, more works raised in the winter. And also a lot of those works that are raised in the winter can be problematic. Leak detection, particularly in high-rise accommodation, can take some time to resolve. And the volume of work will generally prolong the time it takes to clear your work in progress. So your average days, the metric that we referred to earlier, would tend to be slightly longer during the winter months than it would be during the summer months.
What was the target WIP at this stage?
Again, I can't remember the volume target we set, but from a value perspective, it was £500,000.
And was greater emphasis put on the value for the reasons you've given as opposed to volume at this?
We looked at both. From a business financial management perspective, obviously value is incredibly important. We've often spent money on part and not yet finished a repair and haven't yet therefore been able to be paid for it. Operationally, volume is a key driver in terms of scheduling a workforce and planning resource.
Now, Paul Jevaux, your predecessor, had reported at a Repairs Direct board meeting on the 28th of May 2015. We don't need to go to it, but the reference is item 5.2 RBK 0005952/2, that an acceptable level of aged WIP was 40 to 50 jobs at any one time, and there should be a report explaining any exceptional WIP over 2 months old. Would you agree with that as a metric?
40 to 50 jobs in WIP would sound incredibly low, given that we were dealing with, I believe, from memory, something north of 30,000 repairs a year. 40 to 50 jobs is basically a day's work.
Now, can we look at a TMO board meeting which took place at the 30th of March 2017? And if we could go to TMO 1004690/21. Here we have board KPI report, and we see that responsive repairs are there at the top of the page, and average days to complete a responsive repair. I think the key indicator you've identified in your evidence state is green. Mm-hmm. Now, given the backlog that we've just been looking at as set out in your bar chart, did you agree that this performance indicator didn't give a full and therefore accurate picture of the volume and age of the outstanding FRA actions?
In terms of meeting the standard housemark definition of that KPI, it was an accurate reflection of the position of the business. Of course, there were jobs that were completed that had taken more than 10.2 days, but there were many jobs that we were completing within 24 or 48 hours. So it was an accurate reflection of the business performance, yes. And just to clarify that point, Housemark is an industry body in social housing who set the definitions of how you calculate these measures. This is not something that we subjectively came up with.
And that was the criteria you consistently used during your time when measuring performance in relation to responsive repair?
I used it consistently because I felt it was a very strong measure of the actual customer experience, yes.
Now, can I turn to a separate topic, which is repairs direct involvement in the maintenance of flat entrance doors? Now, can I ask you to go to your fifth witness statement, which is at TMO 00842379/6 and paragraph 23. You say there this: I have been asked to detail any involvement Repairs Direct had in work on flat entrance doors at Grenfell Tower, including in relation to self-closing mechanisms. The work carried out by Repairs Direct on flat entrance doors at Grenfell Tower would have been in relation to requests made by residents individually or via the Fire Risk Assessment Programme. Repairs Direct had no involvement in any planned preventative maintenance programme of work in relation to flat entrance doors at Grenfell Tower, insofar as I can recall. Now, do you recall any involvement that Repairs Direct had in the TMO's inspection and planned maintenance regime for flat entrance doors beyond Grenfell Tower?
I recall that I was asked to provide a quotation for an installation programme of door closers, self-closing mechanisms across the borough, and to propose what an inspection regime could possibly cost, and the problems associated with trying to deliver that.
And that's the sum total of your recollection on that issue?
As I recall, yes.
Could we go to LFB *03534/1? Now, this is 2013, so well before you joined Repairs Direct. But Janice Ray emailed Matthew Ramsey, who's a fire safety inspection officer at the LFB, and she said at point 1 of this email, the TMO's approach to self-closing devices on tenants' flat entrance doors. And she says in the second bullet point that when properties become void, self-closers will be reinstated, installed as necessary. At other times when major work has been undertaken in the dwelling, the self-closer will be reinstated if it has been disconnected. Now, it's correct, isn't it, that Repairs Direct carried out repairs and maintenance in void properties?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, when you joined Repairs Direct, was TMO's policy on inspection and maintenance of self-closing devices as set out in this email, and was it communicated to you?
If I can just take the time to reread
course.
the email. Yes, that's how I understood the policy to be.
And who communicated that policy to you? Can you remember now?
It would have been part of our standard lettable standard, the documented lettable standard for void properties.
And so that was something the TMO directed?
Yes, the TMO had agreed a lettable standard with the Royal Borough. That was documented, and that was the standard to which we would reinstate void properties. And it was also part of this in terms of just general flat entrance doors. It was part of the specification for installing a new door. And
it was your understanding that the policy, the approach to self-closers was to be implemented by Repairs Direct staff?
If we were doing the work, then yes, absolutely. As we did not do the work as part of a planned preventative maintenance programme, it was generally part of responsive repairs or in void works.
Thank you. Now, on the 9th of September 2016, Janice Ray circulated papers for the TMO Health and Safety Committee meeting, which was due to be held on the 13th of September. Now, those papers included Paper 6, a review of fire safety policy and strategy, and that can be found at TMO 00840660. Let me go /2. Now, there we go. We can see the third bullet point, the first line says, flat entrance door now have a flat door assessment checklist and a fire door specification that Repair Direct use should be included or referred to and reproduced elsewhere. Now, were you aware that Repairs Direct were using a flat door assessment checklist and fire door specification?
I was aware that we had a specification that we were complying to, yes.
And did you ever have cause to read the checklist or the assessment itself?
I can't recall, I may have done.
Can you remember why each document was produced now?
No. It was standard practice for most major pieces of work to have a specification, so we understood the requirement of the work we were to do. So in installing anything, most of our repairs were to repair and repair like for like. In the events that we had to install new, there was a specification that was documented by the TMO for us to adhere to.
Now, can we go to TMO 00873-603? Thank you. Now, in relation to the specification, we understand that it refers to a specification provided by Paul Brunning to Janice Ray, and we see that here on the 14th of September 2015. And it says, for all FC30 door we are replacing. Now, the attachment can be found at TMO 00873-605. This document needs to be downloaded, for which I apologise to the document manager. And if it's possible to look at the tick list sheet. Thank you. And it sets out there the specification for flat entrance doors, including the self-closing devices. Do you have that?
Yes, I can see.
Now, is that the specification that was referred to in the Fire Safety Strategy Review? Can you help us with that?
I couldn't say for certain. I understood the strategy to around a door called an FD30 rather than FC30. Whether that was a later iteration of this, I couldn't say.
Now, is it correct that the Repairs Direct operatives only carried out fire door repairs and subcontractors would have carried out any replacements to this specification?
So certainly we would have used subcontractors for any UPVC based doors. If they were wooden doors, an FD30 wooden door could have been installed by our own staff who were qualified to do so.
Thank you. Now, just in relation to the checklist, can I take you to a separate email document which can be found at CST 000-30151/3, which hopefully should have been an email from Alex Bosman to Janice Ray on the 2nd of February 2016. We see in the second paragraph, Alex Bosman says, or asked Janice Ray whether she was able to provide a checklist for operatives to confirm doors can be considered nominally fire rated when attending prior to installing a Perco and renewal of hinges. Now, Janice Ray forwarded that email to Alan Brooks. And if we go to page 1 of this chain, and the first paragraph, she says, in the second sentence, as per Alex's request, the fire risk assessor and I have come up with the following checklist for your operatives. She then set out a 10-point checklist to determine whether a door is a notional fire door. Now, again, can you help us? Is that the checklist that was referred to in the Fire Safety Strategy Review?
I don't know if that's the exact checklist. Certainly there are elements of it I would have expected to have seen on the checklist. Alex Bosman would have been qualified to specify the requirements of the doors that we were to fit.
Can I ask you, between the two possible candidates that we've identified for the checklist that was referred to, is this the more likely one compared to the document in the tick list sheet we looked at earlier that referred to FC 30 doors?
I really couldn't say. I would be speculating.
Can I now turn to a separate document, which is TMO 00840660/2. And this is, again, going back to the fire safety strategy review. And if we look at the particular section that dealt with self-closers, which is the 5th bullet point. Thank you. And it said this: self-closers, inspection and maintenance of fitted self-closers. LFB advised that the RRO, so that's the 2005 order, requires regular inspection and maintenance of these devices to ensure that are still operating effectively and have not been disconnected, disabled. The LFB have advised that landlords must not, capitalised, rely exclusively on void checks to undertake these inspections. How can this be progressed? Is this something that ESAs can assist with? Are there any PPM contractors? So that's planned preventive maintenance. Contractors such as gas servicing contractor who could assist. Could it be included in tenancy checks? Could RD, Repairs Direct, be asked to feedback after visiting a property? Now, if we can go on to page 3, and roughly 2/3 of the way down, we see your comments there on this document. Now, you don't comment on the inspection and maintenance of self-closers. My question is this: do you recall what was discussed about these options for inspecting self-closing devices at the Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 13th of September 2016?
I do recall that there was lots of conversations around how to effectively deliver an inspection program on door closers. I don't recall if it was specifically at that meeting, but there was lots of conversations about it.
Sorry, Mr. Webb. Do you remember giving your view at that meeting as to whether Repairs Direct staff could check self-closers when carrying out work, any other work at TMO properties?
I don't recall specifically giving my advice, no.
Now, can I turn to another document, which is, I'm afraid, another email chain, TMO 00863767 and /3. And we see there at the very bottom of the page is the start of an email from Janice Ray to Derek Singleton on the 8th of December 2016. The full email is over the page on page 4. And that she asks Derek Singleton, who was your ops manager, about actions arising from the FRA for Frinstead House. And if we could look at the bottom paragraph on page 4, there we go. And asking if he could assist with checking whether the flat entrance doors were self-closing FD30s. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we go to page 3, the first paragraph and the second line, Mr. Singleton says this in his reply: he queries why Carl Stokes had not checked them and suggested it would be, quotes, better for Carl Stokes to assess what is required that we, i.e. Repairs Direct, can work to. And then if we can go up to page 2, we have Janice Ray's response. And in the first paragraph, she says this, amongst other matters: do we not have someone who can assess the doors he highlights and hasn't been able to access, as per the nominal checklist that we use for Adair, Goni, ? And then goes on to the second paragraph: also, shouldn't we have another resource we can call on for these assessments, in the final sentence? And if we go up to page 1, and the bottom, Mr. Singleton replies, can you send me through the checklist used for Adair, and I'll get one of the supervisors to check these. And Janice Ray replied, if we see further up the page, on the 30th of December 2016, here is the info that I provided Alan Brooks in relation to a nominally fire-rated door. Clearly, all flat entrance doors now need to be fitted with self-closing devices, and so the checklist needs amending to include the present and effective operation of a self-closing device. However, where door inspections are recommended because the door has clearly been replaced in relatively recent timeframe, this door must meet the current standard and be self-closing FD30s, fitted with all intumescent and cold seals, etc. Now, did Repairs Direct supervisors carry out flat entrance door inspections more widely than at Frinston House after this exchange of correspondence?
No, they didn't.
Can you help us as to why not?
Inspecting to inspect for a self-closing device being on a door, a Perco self-closing device is a chain that's fitted between the inside of the door into the inside of the frame. It's only therefore visible by going into the property and looking at the door. Residents are reluctant to take time from work for appointments for you to come look at something that isn't broken, and therefore it's very difficult to get access. And that's the subject of much discussion when we were being asked to look at a borough-wide inspection process. So I think from memory, our supervisors pursued, with the help of resident liaison staff, an inspection at Frinsted House, but we never resolved the issue on how you could look at internally contained Perco self-closers on doors across the borough.
Thank you. Now, I think earlier in your evidence, but certainly in your statements, you referred to the fact that after completing a programme of flat entrance door works for Adair and Hazelwood Towers,
Yes.
Repairs Direct were asked to quote for a 3-year programme to install self-closers on flat entrance doors across the boroughs.
Yes.
Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Now, can we look at a paper that Janice Ray drafted for the joint management team meeting between the RBKC and the TIM on the 1st of March 2017, and it's entitled Installation of Self-Closing Devices on Flat Entrance Doors for Discussion. That can be found at RBK quintuple 0 988/1. So there we go, there's the document. If we can turn to page 3, we see there at the bottom half of the page a table setting out the estimated costs of both the proposed self-closer installation programme as well as the proposed self-closer inspection and maintenance programme. Now, Janice Ray said in her evidence that you provided the information which went into that table. Is that correct?
Yes, I worked on this with Sam Hart, who was my commercial manager.
Now, given that, is it right that the assumptions and estimated costs set out in the table covered all flat entrance doors in TMO properties, including those which had been replaced as part of the door replacement programme between 2011 and 2013?
It looked at all front entrance doors except those that were properties with a street entrance. So in other words, flats that were part of a block, not those with a front door that opened directly onto the street. So
subject to that caveat, the table did cover all flat entrance doors, including those that had been part of the flat entrance door replacement programme in 2011.
To the best of my recollection, yes.
Okay. Now, under the heading Installation Programme for Total Stock, so that's the first item, the assumption is 75% installation. Now, that appears to suggest that 75% of flat entrance doors would need to have self-closing devices installed. Is that a correct reading of that table?
Yes, and that's an assumption that we made at the time, correct, yes.
Can you help the panel as to what the basis was for that assumption?
I'm afraid I can't recall.
Now, under the second heading, Inspection Maintenance Programme, what was the basis for the assumption that 20% of flat entrance doors required their closers repaired or adjusted?
It was fairly common to find that when you visited a property that the door closer had been disabled or removed. Residents struggled with it. If it made the door quite heavy, if you were trying to go through with a buggy perhaps, or some shopping, or perhaps if you were an elderly resident. And also some residents liked to be able to leave their front door open and if their children were playing on the balcony outside the flat, which of course the door closer prevented. So it was very common to find that they'd been removed.
And would the same factors have informed the assumption that 20% of doors required closers to be replaced?
Yes, because some were simply disabled, others were removed entirely.
Thank you. Now, can I turn to repairs carried out to flat entrance doors at Grenfell, and can we look at some specific examples? and first of all, flat 26. Now, the resident of flat 26 says at paragraph 4b of his statement to the inquiry, and I quote, "There was an instant after the front door to my flat was replaced when I was trapped inside my flat. I contacted the TMO and informed them that I was stuck inside my flat and could not get the door to open. The TMO sent somebody over and he managed to open the door from the outside and carried out repair works to the door. I had no further problems with the new door after these repair works were carried out." And the resident then went on to state, further, the contractor who was sent to fix the door offered to take off the self-closing mechanism on the door and did not mention anything about the risk that this would cause. I chose not to have self-closing mechanism removed. And the reference is IWS *0001742/4. Now, the repair records that the inquiry has been provided, which were extracted from Repairs Direct Open Contractor system, suggests that a repairs directive, Franklin Griffiths, completed this repair on the 18th of May 2016. Are you able to explain why a repairs direct operative appears to have offered to remove a self-closing device?
No, I'm not able to explain that, and I'm disappointed if that were the case.
Were repairs direct operatives made aware of the purpose and requirement of self-closing devices on flat entrance doors?
Yes, they were.
And is that something you can speak personally to, having witnessed instructions being given to your staff?
The subject of door closers was a very large discussion point around the TMO for some months, and it was certainly discussed in toolbox talks that I attended with those staff.
Can I now turn to flat 153 at the tower? And if we can turn to TMO 100233348. Now, this is a display job screenshot for repair to flat 153, raised on the 29th of July 2016. F. Griff, who I think refers to Franklin Griffiths. Nothing much wrong with door apart from door closer missing. Now, we found no record of a repair following the self-closer issue. Now, where an operative identified an issue with a flat entrance door and the need for a further repair, or indeed a replacement to that door during a job, was there a process in place for progressing the further repair?
Yes, indeed. The operative would be expected to, if he didn't have the materials on his van there and then, he would be expected to arrange for a second job to be raised with a detailed description of exactly what work had to be completed.
Now, were operatives required to notify anyone if a door was left insecure or the fire resistant was adversely impacted, for example, if the self-closer had been removed pending a further repair?
If a door was insecure, then there was an established procedure for putting a temporary secure door in place. If a door closer was detached, then they were instructed to reattach it.
And again, can you testify that that instruction was given to your staff?
Absolutely, yes.
Can I now turn to flat 135? Now, if we go to IWS *0002065/3, Samuel Daniels was the resident of flat 135, and he says at paragraph 14, which is just below the halfway mark of that page, this: one evening, this fault was raised with the TMO by phone on an emergency line, as it was at night, and the front door was not closing. According to my housing file, this happened on the 4th of April 2017. I remember a caretaker came out and took out the middle hinge and the door. This made the door close once you pulled it closed, but there was still an issue with the lock system. The caretaker said they would come back and replace the entire door, but they never did. Now, the repair records show an out-of-hours repair request for flat 135 on the 4th of April. We don't need to go to it, but the reference is row 82, RBK 000053297. And that request was described as a front door not closing, which is recorded as having been completed by a repairs direct operative at Piotr Klimovich on the same day, rather than a caretaker. Now, the records also show a follow-on repair request on the 5th of April 2017, and the reference is row 84, RBK 000053297. Again, we don't need to go to it. And that was described as an overhaul complete UPVC front door. The target date was set as the 8th of May, and a subcontractor doorway maintenance was allocated the repair. The repair, however, was recorded as abandoned, and there's nothing further is recorded. Now, that's a very long run-up to hopefully a shorter question, which is this: when a repair was abandoned, was there a system in place for checking why it had been abandoned and that the repair was subsequently carried out?
If a repair was abandoned, the majority of occasions that would have been because the staff were unable to access the property. When the staff were unable to access the property, they would, so firstly they would ring the doorbell or knock on the door. If there was no answer, they would ring the resident's telephone number, which they had on their PDA. They would then call the office, who would also try and call the resident. And if we were still unable to get any contact with them, we would leave a postcard notifying them that we tried to attend, and the operative would take a photograph of the front door, which would be uploaded from his PDA to evidence that we had attended at that point. The postcard that we left through the letterbox would instruct the resident to recontact us to make a further appointment for the repair to be complete.
Thank you. Can I now turn to a separate and distinct topic, which is that of complaints? And if we can go to TMO 100260824/3. Now, this is an email from Andrea Newton from the Lancaster West Residents Association, and it's an email sent to Sasha Jevons and others. Now, if we look at the third paragraph, she says this in the second sentence: I feel there is a huge lack of coordination within TMO and Repairs Direct. She then goes on to explain in detail her concern about the management of repairs. And if we go down to the sixth paragraph, which starts, but despite management at TMO literally micromanaging specific repairs that are then passed on to the relevant people within the repairs departments, staff are seeming to completely ignore procedure or are incapable of getting bookings finalised and contractors to arrive to the jobs on the right day, if at all. Also, there are conflicting stories coming from various staff, all working on the same repair. This simply does not reflect the customer satisfaction data you have gathered. Now, Sasha Jevons forwarded that to you and various others later that day. My question is this: did you agree with Andrea Newton's assessment that there was a lack of coordination between the TMO and Repairs Direct?
No, I wouldn't have agreed with that. However, what I would accept is that Andrea Newton was a resident on the Lancaster West estate, and she certainly was getting a perception that things were not running as smoothly as they should. And certainly I was certainly not being complacent, and I do believe that our service could improve, but not to the degree that she describes there.
Did you have any cause to consider that Andrea Newton was exaggerating the scale of the concerns regarding Repairs Direct, responsiveness to sorting out repairs?
I can't speak for Andrea Newton's perceptions. She's documented something here.
To the best of your knowledge, put differently, were the concerns she's raised here in this email representative of broader concerns expressed by residents in TMO properties about Repairs Direct service?
It was not unusual if I went to resident meetings and resident associations, as I did from time to time, for residents to complain about the time it took to complete repairs, particularly difficult repairs. So I'm not surprised by that comment.
Do you accept that her views were representative, therefore?
Her views represented her perception. Clearly from that note, it's not for me to interpret what she meant beyond that, I don't think.
Now, can we turn to page 2 within this email chain? And it's point 4 of Sasha Jevons's email to you and others, including Mr. Black. And it says this: Graham, please start thinking about when we can start the Lanc West pilot, if not already. What was the Lanc West pilot?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find that on this.
I'm terribly sorry. It's her email to you, so if you go slightly further up the page. See at the very top.
Right.
Sorry. Can you remember what that pilot was?
I'm struggling to remember. I believe that we were considering allocating a number of operatives to work specifically and exclusively on the Lancaster West estate, and to see how that improved our service delivery for those residents.
So, given the purpose underlying the pilot, is it fair to say that there were genuine substance to the concerns expressed by Andrea Newton?
It would suggest that there was more than one person saying such a thing. You're right. I'm always open to trying new operational models, see if it's going to help deliver a better service to the customer.
Did you meet Sasha Jevons to discuss the concerns identified by Andrea Newton and which the Lanc West pilot appears to have been designed to remedy?
I don't recall. Sorry.
So, how regular would your meetings be with Sasha Jevons?
Sasha and I would certainly have met at the monthly Repairs Direct Management Group and probably once a month in between that.
How efficient was Sasha Jevons about chasing you to answer requests, emails, or to see whether tasks had been completed?
Very much so. Her PA also supported her in doing that.
So can we take it that it's likely, if not probable, that you did subsequently discuss the concerns expressed by Andrea Newton with Sasha Jevons?
I may have done. I don't recall having a specific conversation on that point.
Can you remember whether the Lanc West pilot was implemented?
No, I don't.
Do you remember there being any pressure from executives at the TMO to ensure that the Lanc West pilot was implemented?
No, I don't recall that.
Did you receive any correspondence from councillors expressing concerns about the efficiency and effectiveness of the service provided by Repairs Direct, at least in relation to Lancaster West?
I received correspondence from councillors on behalf of their of residents in their constituencies from time to time, and generally they would be about problems. So I can't say if it was specifically about Lancaster West, but certainly I did receive correspondence from councillors.
Can I ask you to turn to TMO 008999676/3? This is the witness statement of Shannon McInnes, and if we could look at paragraph 12, and in particular the third line, she says this: a lot of residents were unhappy with the quality of repairs works, the time it was taking to handle the repairs, and also the level of priority allocated to the repair. Were you aware of a lot of resident dissatisfaction with the quality of repairs being carried out?
I would disagree with the phrase that it was a lot. We did track resident satisfaction. There were a volume of, as a standard routine, there were a proportion of all completed repairs received a follow-up call to assess customer satisfaction with the service delivered. And of course, we also kept records of the volume of complaints received. The volume of complaints received, as I recall, was in low percentage figures compared to the number of repair works we completed.
Were you aware of a reputation held by Repairs Direct for poor management of repairs and indeed disdain for residents?
No, I was not aware of that.
Now, are you familiar with the name Samantha Burrell?
I am.
And what was her role?
Samantha Burrell worked in the call centre for the TMO for a period of time, and latterly, towards the end of my time at Repairs Direct, she moved into working into customer service role for me, handling complaints.
Could I ask us to go to TMO 00894-344/10? If we go to paragraph 44, and it's really the first line, Samantha Burrell explained that Repairs Direct carried out customer satisfaction surveys, and in relation to those surveys, she says at paragraph 45, just below, residents were called and asked to give marks out of 10. We had to maintain over a 90 to 95% satisfaction rate. So if I was to make 10 calls who gave marks under 6, I would have to call another 10 to make sure percentage went higher. And if we go over the page to paragraph 46, she said this: however, in my view, these statistics did not provide a true picture of the repairs carried out. When I commenced employment with Repairs Direct, the ethos was to select specific jobs, which was almost a guarantee positive reactions to the works, for example, a tap repair, to bolster the percentage. Now, were you aware of the efforts to bolster satisfaction rates for repairs as set out here by Samantha Burrell?
Absolutely not. And my firm belief was that the calls were selected at random.
Was there any doubt at any time about resident satisfaction with the quality of repairs?
I was very clear about residents' perception of the quality of repairs. We had our customer satisfaction surveys, as you see here. We had our complaints data, and we had feedback from resident meetings.
Thank you. Can I now turn to a separate topic, which is that of vulnerable persons? And if I could ask you to turn to TMO 00866011. Now, this is, as you see, a TMO senior management team meeting on the 18th of February 2016. And if we go to page 4 and item 8.1, it's under the heading Supporting People Policy. It's recorded that TB, so Teresa Brown, advised that there was not a mechanism for staff to feedback information on resident vulnerabilities, which led to the development of this policy. A CRM process is being developed around this. TB and GW, so that's you, will discuss the most suitable mechanism for Repairs Direct staff to feedback any concerns. The form and policy will undergo some further amendments, and HC, so Hash Shamshun, added that CAS, do you know what that is?
It was the assisted living areas. Forgive me, I can't remember the exact interpretation of the letters, but it was assisted living areas.
It needs to be included in the document. TB to ask David Noble to discuss amendments with HC. Now, do you recall discussion about the Supporting People policy and how Repairs Direct staff would report back identified vulnerabilities of residents?
Yes, I do.
And what was the substance of that discussion?
Effectively, the reality, what we all understood was that due to the nature of Repairs Direct work, we possibly entered more of the properties than any other part of the TMO and encountered more of the residents on a daily basis than other people. The PDAs that the operatives held on which they received their work would flag any known inappropriate vulnerability, and that could be that it was perhaps a mother with very young children or a fragile elderly person, or it could flag an alert for a potential violent resident, for example. If they encountered something that differed to that, they could, they were empowered to walk away if they felt in any way endangered themselves. But if they felt that the resident was in another way vulnerable that hadn't been notified, then they would flag that to their planner so by calling our office, and they would notify it to the customer service centre, and Teresa Brown's team would follow it up.
Thank you. Now, can we go to TMO 00866013/1? Now, this is the TMO supporting residents procedure, which seems to have come into practical effect in or about April 2016. First of all, are you familiar with that document?
I don't recall reading it particularly.
Can you help us as to whether your staff were trained on the requirements of this procedure?
Yes, my staff were trained on what to look for in terms of resident vulnerability and how to handle that should they encounter it.
So you hadn't seen the document, but your staff were trained on its requirements?
Yes, I believe so. I was certainly aware that the training was going to take place and supported that, and that was a requirement.
And can you now remember when that training took place and who was responsible for providing it?
I don't remember when. I believe it was delivered by a member of Teresa Brown's team during one of our toolbox talks with the operatives.
Can we turn to TMO 00901356? And this should be a Repairs Direct operative summary form. There's a list here of the types of issues that may affect a resident and a box for comments. Now, have you seen this form before?
It's not familiar to me particularly, no.
Can you help us as to whether that was used by Repairs Direct operatives?
It may have been. I would have been surprised. I would have expected them to have rung the office and delivered the information firsthand, having left the property, rather than try and find a form in the van to fill out and hand in.
Would there or should there have been, as part of that process, some form of document to record what a Repairs Direct operative have found, particularly if it concerned a vulnerability or a disability of a particular resident?
So my expectation and my understanding of the process they follow was, having called the planner in the office, that the planner would have immediately completed an email to record the nature of the concern being flagged by the operative, and that would have been sent to the housing team to follow up.
Thank you. Can I now turn to the issue of the health check audit review after the fire at Grenfell? And could I ask you to go to TMO 00862541/5. Now, this is a report entitled Repairs Direct, The Way Forward, prepared by the Interim Managing Director for Repairs Direct, Chris Furlong, for a TMO board meeting held on the 18th of January 2018. So that's after you'd left the company in November 2017. Mm-hmm. Can we go to page 11, which ought to be Appendix 1 of the report? And this sets out the findings of a health check on the Repairs Direct service. And if we go about a third of the way down, we see in the far left-hand column OP 05, and it's recorded backlog of repairs dates to January 2017, total number 5,400 jobs. Now, given the concerns raised about the backlog, which had been a consistent feature during your time at the Repairs Direct, can you account for how this backlog amassed from January 2017 onwards?
Sadly, in the immediate aftermath of the fire, I dedicated a number of my team to work on the Lancaster West Estate, on the other homes which had been evacuated in the immediate footprint of Grenfell Tower. So we were replacing doors that had been, the police had opened forcibly. We were reassuring residents of the safety of the properties and helping to encourage people to move back in. I'd also devoted a number of my staff to increase the speed with which we turned around void properties to create more opportunities to rehome people who were in temporary accommodation following the fire. At the same time, productivity of the teams reduced significantly for a couple of reasons. Obviously, they felt, as everyone did, the gravity of the huge horror that had occurred. Excuse me. And they were struggling to conduct their day-to-day work. And residents across the borough were also, frankly, scared of the risk of fire in their own property. I'm sorry, could I have a moment?
Would you like to stop for a minute?
Yeah, could I, please?
Yeah. The usher will take you out for a minute if you'd like to go out. I think the best thing is if we rise just for a few moments, and as soon as Mr. Webb feels able to carry on, then we'll of course resume.
Thanks.
Thank you. If Mr. Webb's ready, would you ask him to come back in, please?
Thank you for that.
All right now, Mr. Webb?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Kinnear.
Thanks, sir. Can we go back just briefly, only a few more questions, Mr. Webb, to the document where we're at, and go to the bottom of this page? So it's OP 11, which is the bottom of the page, and it says there is no structured approach to categorising repairs into types of repairs, e.g. FRA actions, complaints actions, standard repairs, etc., and as such are difficult to manage, monitor, or prioritise. Now, given the emphasis that had been put on prioritising FRA actions since at least January 2016. Can you explain that particular finding?
No, I can't. And obviously, it postdates my time there. I can only assume that some of the processes I had put in place had unravelled in the time since.
Can we turn over the page, roughly 2/3 of the way down, and look at OP 19? Where it says that repairs processes are inefficient and not working, a lack of consisting working, spelling is correct there, is causing jobs to fail. Are you able to explain this particular finding?
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
If we can turn to page 16, fourth row, and we see the HS08 on the far left, which says there is a health and safety training matrix for workforce, but is not up to date. Staff are not up to date with training. Given the concerns that have previously been raised about training, which we discussed earlier on this morning, are you able to explain this conclusion here?
No, I mean, what I can say is that in the immediate aftermath of the fire, as I explained earlier, the staff productivity had dipped considerably. They were struggling with the aftermath of the fire, as much of us. And we had diverted a number of resources to work on particular issues on the Lancaster West estate to make those homes fit for rehabilitation, and also to turn around void properties as quickly as we could to provide alternative living for those who'd been made homeless. And therefore the available staff for day-to-day tasks had slowed down, which I think also speaks to your earlier comment about the amount of work that had built up in a backlog. And certainly, even between the date of the fire and the date of my departure, some of our regular processes slipped because we were very much in a reactive environment and had trying to do the best we could for everyone around us.
Mr. Webb, thank you very much. Sir, those are my end of my questions as it stands. May I have the usual opportunity?
Yes.
I'd like to ask for 10 minutes and just see if there are any further questions I've missed out, or
No, of course.
indeed whether any further questions others may have.
Yes, of course. Well, Mr. Webber, you may know that when Council gets to the end of his questions, or thinks he has, we have a short break to enable him to take stock and to enable others who aren't present in the room to suggest questions that perhaps ought to be asked.
Of course.
So we'll break now until 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock we'll get you back in and see if there are any more questions for you, but I hope we'll quite soon get to the end of the whole business, all right?
Thank you, sir.
So if you go with the usher, we'll see you at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Right, Mr. Kinnear, we'll come back in at 1 o'clock. If you find you need more time, then just let the usher know. And
Thanks, sir.
us. Right? Thank you. Would you ask Mr. Webb to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Webb, I'm sorry we kept you waiting longer than I indicated, but sometimes that happens.
I'm sure. Thank you.
Anyway, we'll now see if there are any more questions for you. Yes, Mr. Kinnear.
Thanks, sir. Just a few more questions, if you'd bear with me, Mr. Webb. Now, we discussed Ms. Burrell's views earlier in examination. In her witness statement, she'd suggested that there'd been a lack of oversight and technical competency on the part of Repair Direct operatives, and in particular, she mentioned that RD operatives had the minimum relevant skill accreditations, which were not monitored, and training was not readily available, and Repairs Direct was not part of any accreditation, training, or monitoring health and safety schemes. First of all, would you accept those criticisms that she makes?
No, that's certainly not my recollection and my impression of that.
Is it right to say that Repairs Direct operatives were only required to have minimal relevant skill accreditations?
No, they would have required to have had a core apprenticeship, which we would have confirmed with City and Guilds or the appropriate accrediting body, and then we often upskilled them so they could conduct more than one task. So, for example, rather than having to send both an electrician and a plumber to do some work on a boiler, we would train the plumber on how to isolate the electrics and make him more of what we call a multi-skilled technician.
She charged Repairs Direct with having no monitoring of training of Repairs Direct operatives. What would you say to that allegation?
Again, I wouldn't agree with that. We sponsored a number of operatives who were going through, in their own time, evening classes to further their skills. And when they achieved those further qualifications, we expanded the range of work that they were allocated to put those skills to use.
Thank you. Sir, I have no further questions arising. And the final thing for me to say is to thank you, Mr. Webb, for attending to give evidence today.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Webb, I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of all the members of the panel. It is very helpful to us to hear directly from those people who were involved in these matters. And in your case, it's the second time around.
It is,
I remember
yes.
seeing you on the previous occasion. So
Yes.
thank you very much for giving us more of your time to come and tell us what you know.
I'm happy to help, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, now it's all over and you're free to go.
Thank you.
Thank
sir.
you. So if
Thank
you'd
you.
like to go with the usher, she'll look after you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Kinnear. Well, that's obviously a convenient point at which to break. I think I'm right in saying we don't have any further witnesses for today, is that right?
That's right, sir, and you have the opening statements in relation to the issue of smoke control tomorrow morning.
Yes, and we shall start that at the slightly earlier time of 9:30. So we'll break now until 9:30 tomorrow morning, please.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.